Texas A&M starts fall camp this week. We got some big questions for the Aggies coming up.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are Locked On the Texas A&M Aggies. I am your host, Mac Galatzan of Texas A&M Aggies on SI. Thank you for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Joining me today is my deputy editor over there at Texas A&M Aggies on SI, Zach Dimmitt. And Zach, fall camp finally starts this week. We get football back on Wednesday. Tomorrow we're going to have some press conferences from Mike Elko and the coaches down there in College Station, and Texas A&M Aggies and Locked On Aggies will be on site for that. But before camp starts, there's a lot to talk about here at the Aggies. There's a lot of things that we want to see, a lot of questions that we have going into camp, some new guys coming in, some different things we're going to be looking for. And it's just a really exciting time, Zach, because football is back, right?
Right. Yeah. I keep saying next season when I'm talking about 2025, and it's literally next month. So I need to really change my phrasing there, because it feels like it's still far away because the offseason just drags on and on and on. But yeah, we're here. We're back. It's super exciting time, especially for a program like A&M. Things were kind of rough there during the Jimbo Fisher era, but now Mike Elko really has this team on the brink of contention. Obviously they're on the brink of contention last year for SEC championship. So, expectations are really high. And so that's why we got some burning questions headed into fall camp.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to come right off with I think what my biggest question is. And I think that's, how does Marcel Reed take a step forward here in year two? Last year, under first-year offensive coordinator Colin Klein, this offense was really built for Connor Wegman. It was not built for Marcel Reed. They had certain things in there that, the whole thing was designed to fit Wegman's strengths. And midway through the season, obviously he struggled with injuries early on, and then Marcel Reed came in the Florida game, really made a lot of noise. And then Wegman came back, struggled a little bit. That LSU game, he really took control and asserted himself as the starting quarterback. But as the year progressed, it was really a situation where, they were trying to make things easy for Marcel. There was a lot of RPOs, a lot of one read type plays, a lot of running the football and those types of things. So how does he take a progression forward in this system? There's a couple things that I'm looking for here. Number one, how does he, with a full offseason with Colin Klein, expand his control of the playbook? How does he progress and go through first read, second read, third read, really open things up in that way? For this offense to reach its full potential, he needs to be able to run a full offense instead of just a RPO run and go one read type thing. Otherwise, it's going to become quite predictable. Even though the RPO it works to his strengths, that's absolutely right. A thing because he's such a mobile guy. And he's so athletic, and the running backs are so good that it gives him the option to do a bunch of different things there. But that's step one for me, is progressing forward in the playbook and taking a step forward there. And the other thing that I'm really looking at is his footwork. I was watching some film breakdowns of him earlier this week and at the end of last week, and what you really start to notice is that he's doing way too much with his feet in the pocket. I think he needs to make that his footwork a little bit more subtle, a little bit more deliberate, so he can get into his stance, get into his his progressions and all those different things, and get rid of the ball quicker, get rid of the ball with more authority, because he's got the talent. All the physical tools are there. He's probably got more room to improve than any other SEC quarterback in terms of, filling out the skill set of his game. But if he can make those two adjustments going into year two, I think he has a chance to be really successful.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money with that one. I think Marcel Reed got a lot of slack last season, especially from Texas fans. They like to throw in the Marcel one read sort of trash talk at him. And so, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see if he can kind of, get out of that stigma headed into next season, not just be a, run first kind of guy, but a guy that can really utilize the weapons that A&M brought in. Because as I'm going to, get to here in a second, it's very clear the coaching staff emphasized improvement on the offensive personnel. And they got Marcel Reed tons of weapons. The running backs are already super strong, but really reloaded the receiving core, tight ends as well. And that's actually what I'm going to lead into is my biggest question is the tight ends. I know it's not the sexiest topic, but I feel like it's something that gets kind of overlooked because A&M has brought in such talented receivers, Kevin Concepcion, Mario Craver, Jonah Wilson is even getting overlooked a little bit, the Houston transfer. But because of all that, don't get me wrong, there's tons of talent in the receiving room, but the tight ends are getting overlooked a little bit, in my opinion. It's just a logjam. 3 transfers. You got Theo Mellon-Orstrom coming back, who had a pretty solid year last year. But yeah, I'm just interested to see how that's going to work out. You got Amari Niblack, the Texas transfer, more of a pass or catch first kind of guy. Didn't really have a ton of production last year with the Longhorns. I think they expect a little bit more out of him coming from Alabama. Now he's with his 3rd SEC school, so we'll see what happens there. I know certain depth charts have him listed as the starter, but we'll see about that. I think Theo Mellon-Orstrom's a really productive guy, so we'll see how that goes. But then you got 2 other transfers, so it's pretty weird to me. You don't see 3 tight end transfers come in very often in one off season. Nate Borkacher, I think I'm pronouncing that right, from Nebraska. Not as much production with them as a receiver, but his graduate transfer has a lot of experience. Hopefully he can bring something to the table there. But it's pretty unlikely that we're going to see him putting up tons of big numbers next year unless injury happens, ahead of him. But you also got Micah Riley, the Auburn transfer. So, 3 tight end transfers, 2 from the SEC. So you got 2 guys that clearly still want to play SEC ball, feel like they can contribute. And all these guys are pretty experienced. So I feel like we haven't really talked about tight ends as much this offseason. But I think especially with the strength of the running backs, giving Marcel Reed time in the pocket as well, but also giving him a security blanket. Once you pop out for a short little pass there after blocking, you never know how these tight ends are going to work in the offense. But I think those are going to be really important guys for Marcel Reed and the entire offense this upcoming season, just because of what tight ends can bring when it comes to versatility and things like that. So interested to see how Amari Niblack does from a production standpoint as a pass catcher. Within those other guys as well, how will they contribute in ways that maybe don't pop up on the stat sheet? But by midseason, you could hear Mike Elko and Colin Klein, probably raving about some of these guys. So interesting to see how that will all play out because there's not really necessarily a clear starter, in my opinion. So,
yeah, and I would expect that Orstrom probably gets the first crack at the starting role. He's experienced in the system. He knows the playbook. He's been productive, like you said, in the past. And the other guys, they got in the portal for a reason. They weren't getting the production or whatever they needed at their previous stops. But I'm glad you brought up Amari Niblack because this is a guy that he obviously has a lot of talent. We saw what he did at Alabama with his ability to catch the ball downfield, and he's got breakaway speed, and he's a super athletic guy. But for whatever reason at Texas, he wasn't able to crack that rotation. And obviously, the Longhorns had Gunnar Helm, who was, an All-American type tight end there, and he was Quinn Ewer's best friend on the field. He was always in the right place at the right time. So it was no surprise that he was ahead of Niblack for those reasons alone. But then you expected him to kind of be that number 2 guy, and then he still fell behind Juan Davis on the depth chart there. So I suspect that part of that reason was due to his I don't want to say lack of ability because I think he can do it, but maybe his struggles in the run blocking aspect of being a tight end. So maybe that's something that he emphasized this spring, this summer, and going into fall camp that he can really hone in on and be a more reliable option in multiple facets of being a tight end. Because if this guy can put it all together, there might not be another tight end on this roster who has the athletic gifts and the ability to do things downfield and in the middle of the field that Amari Niblack does. And I think that if he can put that all together, then Marcel Reed will find him quite a bit. I think, tight ends are obviously a quarterback's best friend when things break down in the pocket, right? So that's going to be a very interesting thing for me to watch. And I feel like Amari Niblack is a real prime candidate to break out in this offense.
Yeah, and he's probably going to not get as much attention as you would expect, just based off the receivers that are already in the offense. I don't think a lot of defenses are going to be expecting Amari Niblack to be the number one option, and he's not going to be. But you never know. We could have a few SEC games where we just see him leading the way because all the attention's on Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver, and Marcel Reed just going to keep finding Amari Niblack against the linebacker. In man coverage, he's probably going to outrun most of those linebackers. I mean, SEC linebackers, don't get me wrong, they're going to have lots of speed nowadays, but this guy's, pretty athletic. He's more of just a big receiver, if anything. But yeah, and I agree with you, seeing how things go with him when it comes to blocking in the run game. I think, obviously this is a run-first offense, in my opinion. When you have a quarterback like Marcel Reed and a, potential Heisman running back like Le'Veon Moss, we'll see how he bounces back from injury. But I think that's going to be a really important aspect. They're probably going to want to emphasize that with him more, the run blocking first, because they know the pass catching is going to come easily for Amari Niblack. So, yeah, tight end is definitely something to watch. Tons of experience in that room, so they don't got to worry about anyone maybe struggling to learn the playbook or anything like that, because these guys have all done it for a pretty good while now.
Yeah, and Colin Klein also does a great job of simplifying offenses as well, and I think that that's not only going to play a big role in Marcel Reed's development, but it's also going to play a big role in Amari Niblack's development. He's probably not going to be asked to do a lot of the same things that he was asked to do in a Steve Sarkisian offense, which by college standards, it is a lot more complicated of a system than you typically see other places. So, all of these guys should be able to grasp these concepts pretty easily and really have productive years in a season where they desperately need some tight ends because, we know what they brought in the transfer portal, like you mentioned. They also have Terry Bussey, who's going to be playing multiple roles. They also have Ashton Bethel-Roman, who's expected to take a step forward here as well. But if they can implement those tight ends and really make this offense, as versatile as it could possibly be, then I think you're really going to see year two of Colin Klein be what we anticipated coming in the first year, which is this offense hitting on all cylinders. Let's change gears a little bit. We're gonna talk about a little bit of NFL news. Shamar Stewart, obviously a lot about him over the last couple of days, so we'll get into that after this break. So stick with us here, and we'll get into some Shamar Stewart news. It's pretty interesting. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever wished managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I know when I started using Monarch Money, I instantly realized that I had far too many streaming subscriptions coming out of my account every single month, which allowed me to cancel these recurring costs and save myself hundreds of dollars a year. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, Zachary, we are back, and we are going to talk Shamar Stewart. He has been one of the biggest stories in the NFL offseason. Regardless of position or team or whatever, Shamar Stewart has been a newsmaker this offseason, but not for good reasons. He was at one point, he was one of two rookies that had yet to sign their rookie deal coming out of the NFL draft. He was holding out due to some language in his contract that, the Bengals were trying to set a new precedent with their draft picks. And Shamar Stewart did not want to be the guinea pig of that deal. It's really hard to blame him for feeling that way. It's understandable that, the Bengals stood strong on their beliefs. I think most people kind of sided with Shamar in this case, though, including myself. I'm pretty sure you're in that camp as well.
Oh yeah.
But he finally signed his deal. I believe it was on Friday that he finally signed his deal. He got all the guarantees he wanted, apparently. Everybody's happy on both sides, and he has finally returned to camp. And this is big news for the Bengals and big news for Shamar Stewart, so he can finally get in there and begin to get some work in with his new team.
Yeah, I think everyone was just ready for this to be over with, and probably no one more than Shamar Stewart. I think it probably can't. Who knows what went down, behind closed doors? But I bet both sides were just kind of like, let's just get this over with. One side probably had to settle a little bit more than the other. You never know how that goes with some of those contract details, but I'm just glad that it's finally over. We can just stop talking about this dude being unsigned. Like, we just want to see him be on the field. He was a first round pick for a reason. He's kind of behind the curve already when it comes to, getting to know his teammates on the field. He's been around, the facility, obviously, and staying in shape. Obviously there was headlines about him working out at A&M, which we'll get to in a second. But I'm just glad that he's on the field. He's getting those reps in. It hasn't been the prettiest for him based off some of the highlights from training camp, but that's all part of the rookie experience. And I bet some of his teammates, especially on the offensive line, are probably going to be going at him a little bit just because of some of the headlines that he made. But that's part of it. That's part of being a rookie, and so he'll be better for it. But I'm just glad he's got his money. If he does get injured, we pray that he doesn't. But if he does, he's got his money locked down. He has security. And that was really just the main thing of why he wasn't practicing with the team during rookie minicamp and the mandatory minicamp and stuff like that. So, really glad to see that's over with. And now we can finally talk about what's he going to do on the field this season.
Yeah, and he has had his struggles so far here early in camp. I know that there was that clip circulating on Twitter, his first rep rushing the passer on the field. He got blocked by 3 different guys, and it seemed like that whole offensive line was coming after him. Yep. The tight end chipped him, and then the left tackle got after him, and then the left guard, or I guess it was the right guard, came around and got after him too. So he ran into 3 guys on his first rep, and it was not pretty. But that's kind of his little initiation. Welcome to the NFL moment there. There's also been some stuff, where he's looked a little bit tired, or he's gotten beat on a rep by a left tackle or a right tackle or whoever he's going up against. I know that there was one rep that he had where it looked like he was moving the tackle, and then he just kind of lost some steam, and the quarterback was able to get the ball off. So some negatives there. But I also pulled up a clip here that I'm going to show on screen here in a second for those of you watching on YouTube, that he really looked good on this rep. And there was back-to-back plays. I got the first clip, but there was back-to-back plays of him getting PBUs at the line. This play that I'm about to show right now, he blows through the line. And if this was a real-time play in an NFL game or in a scrimmage or whatever the case, this is 100% a sack. He just has to slow down, and so he doesn't hit the quarterback, because hitting a quarterback in training camp is a big no-no. But here's that clip from Shamar right here. And you can see he just really gets through the line and has to slow down, and he just holds his arms up there. We'll play it through. And he's getting the flowers from his teammates as well. They're excited to see it. We'll watch it through one more time here. And he just basically goes unblocked and dominates there on that rep. So good things to see there from Shamar. I feel like the more that he gets ingrained, and the more that he gets in shape and begins to learn the playbook and the scheme there, I think he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, and the Bengals selected him in the first round for a reason, and that really was the whole thing during this whole saga, was why aren't you going to give the guy his money when you already showed that you see a lot of value in him? And so it's never going to be the same even if you're working out. It's never going to be the same when it comes to finally getting reps in on the field. If you're a little bit behind in that aspect, it's simply just going to take a little bit more time for him. Preseason comes around, he probably should be good. Definitely going to get a lot of preseason reps as well, you would expect. So, and I'm just glad to see that it's all over on that front. But he was actually asked earlier today, I believe, about the whole potential return to Texas A&M. He had been working out with the team, like we had mentioned, and then there was reports that maybe he would return to college if things don't work out with the Bengals. And, we finally got his answer from that. He said, quote, no, when asked if he had ever considered returning to A&M. He laughed it off right away. He said, quote, the internet makes up some crazy things sometimes. I just got to sit back and laugh at it sometimes because I don't know where they get it from. I mean, I can't work out back with my old college team. It's stupid, end quote. And so, and Mike Elko had already reiterated that as well at SEC Media Days, that there was never any intention of Shamar Stewart coming back to the team and playing for the team. He was just simply back in College Station. Obviously, he's really familiar with all those guys there. I think we've seen that with a bunch of players before, working out with maybe some old teammates, working out, at their, former school or whatever. So this isn't something out of the ordinary. I think it just got really blown out of proportion. Now we can finally all put that to rest. And we got the answer from Shemar Stewart. We already heard it from Mike Elko. Obviously, now that he signed, there was never any chance of him returning it But it was definitely a weird part of the whole saga, was that he could really return to A&M. But no, that was just a bunch of rumors, nothing true on that front. But definitely interesting to see his reaction to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were so many different things that were floating around about him. Like, was he going to return to A&M? Was he going to enter the 2026 NFL draft? And I thought that was probably a lot more realistic than the returning to A&M part, because the returning to A&M part, even if it was true that he was even thinking about that, which apparently it's not, you gotta get courts involved and get a waiver from the NCAA. And it just seems like this whole long drawn out process that would have not been productive for either side in the long run. It just would have been a distraction all year for A&M anyway, even though he's a fantastic player. The best course of action for both parties happened, and for the Bengals happened on Friday. Now we finally get to see what Shamar Stewart can do on the field. Is he going to be, their main pass rushing option? I sure hope not, because they really need to sign Trey Hendrickson to a deal and pay that man his money. Otherwise, they're going to give up 50 points a game. Shamar can't do it all on his own up there, and they got some other holes on the defense that they really need to fill as well. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch going forward. But we're going to change gears once again, and we're going to get into some recruiting back to A&M itself and get into some recruiting updates that we have, including a guy who's, a pretty highly rated recruit who's expected to make his announcement any day now. So we'll talk about that here next on Locked On Aggies. All right, Zach. Recruiting time. A&M has made tons of noise on the recruiting trail this summer. It seemed like once it turned to June, they just kind of went full bore and really started locking guys down. We've had a ton of players that have locked down their recruitments. There's still more guys on the board that are left for them to chase and try and get a commit from. And they're still very much in contention to push for a number one overall class. It's a little bit more difficult now that they've lost a couple of these battles, but it's still very much attainable. And there's a guy that we're going to talk about right now. His name is Anthony Jones. He's a 5-star edge rusher. He is set to make his announcement here over the next couple of weeks. A lot of people think the Aggies are in the lead here. Oregon is also in on the battle as well. They're definitely a threat, not to be taken lightly in this race. I believe Alabama is in there as well. But This is a guy that, they already have a couple 5-star edge rushers in this class, but if they can land Jones, he might be the best of the bunch.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine adding him alongside Tristan Givens, Bryce Perry-Wright on the defensive line. Obviously, we're not going to see those guys, still for another year or so in College Station. But, just imagine the kind of talent that they're going to bring into that freshman class. It's really unbelievable and really, takes a step ahead, in my opinion, of the 2022 class that didn't exactly work out. You don't really get the same vibe with this sort of group. I just think the coaching staff is, eyeing a different kind of player. And you just get the feeling that that's going to work out a lot better for A&M than it did a few years ago under Jimbo Fisher with that talented recruiting class. That'd be a huge get for A&M. They really got some defensive stars in this class, offensive players, of course, as well. Got KJ Edwards running back there. But for the most part, it's a lot of defensive guys, to be honest. I know Brandon Arrington's kind of one of those in-between guys, but he's probably going to play cornerback in college, not receiver. So some of the top guys in this class are all on the defensive side. So you really see what they're emphasizing for the future when it comes to building the foundation of the program moving forward. So yeah, Anthony Tank Jones. Yeah, it's not going to be easy. Alabama and Oregon, but we've seen A&M obviously take down some of the top programs in the country in some of these recruiting battles. So it's really hard to put anything past A&M. Obviously, they beat out Oregon for Brandon Arrington. Obviously it's a whole different battle for a different player, but like I said, you can't put it past the Aggies. They've proven they can compete with the big boys, and they are one of the big boys on the recruiting trail. So that would be a major get for Mike Elko for sure.
Yeah, and let's just listen to some of these stats that Anthony Jones was able to put up last year for St. Paul's Episcopal in Mobile, Alabama. That is a 6A school in the state of Alabama, which is a very high level of football. Alabama has a ton of talent in that state, and he was going up against the best of the bunch. As a junior, 84 tackles, 18 tackles for loss, and 16 sacks. In 2022, as a freshman, he had 130 tackles and 15 sacks with 2 interceptions, one of which he took back for a touchdown, and had 3 receiving touchdowns playing because he played on both sides of the ball. This guy is just an athletic freak, and he's in track and field as well. He did he tossed the discus 161.5 as a junior. He posted a 56.375 shot put rep, which won him his silver medal. So this guy's all over the place, and he's an extremely talented athlete. But he is not the only guy that made news this weekend. He is set to announce here in the next week or so. A&M also had 2 players shut down their recruitments for good. They will stick with the Aggies. They are telling everybody, no, I am good with Mike Elko. I am good in College Station. This is where I want to be. The first one of those was 4-star linebacker DeQuavius Beck. He said, it's a nice environment to be in. Since Coach Elko got there, I've seen a big difference in the program. I like Coach Elko. I like Jay Bateman. I like Trooper Taylor a lot. They have shown me what they really want me there. And, it's really good to see that he's another one of these guys that's really buying into what the Aggies are selling here. He said, I'm 100% committed to continue my academic and athletic career at Texas A&M. Excited, looking forward to helping build a championship team there in College Station. So big time one there for Texas A&M. He's a critical part of this class. And then the other one, we had cornerback Victor Singleton, a 4-star there. He is locked in with Texas A&M. He's the number 4 corner in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. So yeah, big time stuff that these guys are not only committing to the Aggies, but they are buying in very, very early and shutting down their recruitment really 5-6 months before they have to.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time this offseason that we've seen guys shut down their recruitment. I can't even keep track at this point, but there's been quite a handful of guys that have really made sure to let everyone know that, okay, in this world of recruiting, I'm not going to entertain anything else. I'm sticking with A&M, and you really like to see that because A&M's always seen as the little brother in Texas. And, on the recruiting trail, that's certainly not true, in my opinion. I think, they've gotten the best of Texas and a lot of other schools in some major battles. So, that notion is definitely out the door at this point. And so you like to see that even more so when it comes to these guys shutting down their recruitments. But yeah, Victor Singleton, he had flipped from Illinois already. So that just goes to show how strong the recruiting pitch is from Elko and staff, that he was already committed to a power program in the Big Ten. I know Illinois is an Oregon, Penn State, or Ohio State, but that's still a major program. And so for him to be able to flip to A&M, he's number 1 cornerback in Ohio. So it's not like he's a Texas kid. Illinois would have been, not too far for him, but that's how much he believes in A&M, that he's heading all the way to Texas. And obviously, it goes to show how talented the recruiting class is when a guy that's the number 1 cornerback in the state of Ohio, which is major hotbed as well, that he's not even maybe one of the top 5 guys in the class. That just goes to show how talented 2026 is for A&M. But now you get to see if it all can come together once those guys get to campus here in a few years.
Yeah, and what all we really need to see from A&M at this point is more guys lock down their recruitments, get a couple more of these big time commits that they're chasing, Anthony Jones, Devon Benjamin, a couple of these other guys that are still out there that are on the board. But, even if they go into December and this is their class, which I do expect a couple more guys to sign, it's going to be an elite level class and a major success for Mike Elko that I think Aggie fans should definitely be excited about. But we're going to call it there for this episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank you so much for making Locked On Aggies your first listen today. For your second listen, please go check out The Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings, and you can be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find The Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Go check out Zach on Twitter at Zach Dimmitt 7, I believe. Is that correct? And don't forget to give me a follow over on Texas A&M Aggies on SI and on X at Matt Galatzan. And we will see you next time.